Now imagine spending your entire life, right? Years and decades of your life building up a family operation so that you can pass it on to the next generation, only to get to your later years in life and realize that the thing is going to be completely torn apart because you did not take the time and energy to properly set up an estate plan. We have seen this happen time and time again. I've worked with over 300 family farm operations over the past 5 years. The horror stories of how often this happens inside of this industry is honestly mind-boggling, that this many people have not taken the time to set up one of the most important plans of their legacy and making sure that their assets are passed on correctly and fairly to the next generation, making sure that their life's work doesn't die with them, but passes on successfully to the next generation. Inside today's video, we're going to talk about some of the biggest problems that happen and what you're going to face if you don't get your estate plan set up. Now, in today's world, we are in one of the biggest wealth transfers that we are ever going to witness inside of the ag industry. Over the next 20 years, there's going to be billions of dollars in wealth transferred from one generation to the next. And this is in the form of equipment. Obviously, big one here is going to be real estate assets as well. Now, the problem is, though, again, is that a high percentage of family farm operations in this country have zero, I'm going to repeat that, zero estate planning set up. And most of them, this is something that we want to push off or kick the can down the road or say we're going to deal with it in 10 years. But there's so many things that can happen. And I've seen it time and time again where people passed away unexpectedly, and then the family is left there trying to figure out an estate and handle somebody's affairs after they're gone, when everything is disorganized. Nothing is structured. There's no plan. There's no written plan for anything. Everything is chaos, and that is going to cause so much turmoil within that family. And I know if you're watching this and you're the business owner and you're the one creating the legacy, you don't want to put your family through that because of your lack of planning. So make sure you listen up today. Now, the first problem that people are going to face when they don't have an estate plan set up is that all of your assets, when you do pass away, they're going to be subject to estate tax, right? Now, you can simply avoid this by just going and getting your estate plan set up, which part of your estate plan, there's going to be trust set up for you and your spouse. When the assets pass through onto the next generation through a trust, you avoid estate taxes. If you don't have that set up, then you are going to be subject to estate taxes. The other part of this, though, too, which is a big piece for farmers or ranchers and anybody inside the ag industry, is when you don't have your estate plan set up, your assets are going to go through probate court. Now, inside of that, all of your assets are now going to be public record. And ultimately, what's going to happen is the court is going to determine who gets your assets. Now, I know from my personal experience, if I'm spending my life and years of working to build something that I can pass on to the next generation, you can bet your ass that I do not want somebody in court deciding how my assets are to be distributed to my kids. If you have your trust and everything set up, your trust is going to lay out exactly how your assets are to be distributed to make sure that it's the way that you want it going forward. Now, we've had several customers come into Legacy Farmer over the years that have just, again, unbelievable horror stories that they've had to deal with when it comes to either trying to get assets or get what they feel is rightfully theirs. There's lawsuits. I mean, we literally have one customer that's over $600,000 in lawsuits with relatives because an estate plan wasn't set up appropriately. There's all these things that can happen and these negative consequences that can come from not having your estate plan set up and structured correctly. And again, this is just with a few customers, whereas the stories that we've heard from customers of people they've known in their counties and in their communities there, the list goes on and on forever, guys. Now, the other thing here too, though, is when you do have things structured correctly, right? So biggest thing is you're going to avoid probate court, right? Your assets are going to go through a trust and they're going to be distributed. The thing is, though, too, is time, right? So think about how long it takes to settle somebody's estate if they don't have an estate plan set up. It could take years. It could take absolute years to go through and settle all these assets and have to deal with probate court, not to mention all the fees that you're going to rack up in doing this as well. And all those problems and all those challenges can be solved if you very simply have your estate plan set up, which has your trust documents, which is going to say how your assets are to be distributed. And then the attorneys on hand can get those things done and in writing and distributed correctly in a very timely manner. Now, the next challenge here that we have, and this is really more if you are the son or daughter that came back to the operation, you're trying to get your parents to set up your estate plan, is one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry is that you move back to the operation based on the promises of what your parents say you will inherit one day. This is a massive problem because I know, again, several people that have moved back to the operation. They've started their life there. They've had kids there. They've gotten married there. Like, all these things have happened. They've set up their life there based off of the promises of what their parents said they would get at some point in the future. But all of a sudden, 10, 20, 30 years have passed by and nothing's changed. And that leaves you as the son or daughter that came back to the operation wondering, what the hell did I do this for? And I totally get it. So one of the second biggest issue that we have here is that when this scenario comes up, you need to get things in writing. If your parents are promising to give you some sort of control or start passing on assets to you at a certain time or do anything, I get that it's family, but it needs to be in writing, because at the end of the day, emotions come into play here, and your parents will have a very difficult time passing on assets and really releasing control to you, because at the end of the day, they feel more comfortable when they have assets within their control. So make sure that you get things in writing. So problem number one was estate tax issues and really probate court. Problem number two is not getting things in writing and getting a signature from your parents about the assets that you will be inheriting or taking over at some point in the future. Another massive issue that we have when it comes to estate planning is, and I don't know where this comes from, a lot of people inside of that older generation, they feel that they have to distribute the assets evenly between their kids. So common example that we run into in Legacy Farmer is one son or daughter moved back to the operation to take over the operation, right? They moved back right after college. They've been there for 2, 3, 4 decades now, set up their life there. They know every inch of the operation. And then they had 2 siblings that maybe moved to the city or just in a different line of business and things like that, and have never contributed to the operation. Now, there's a lot of big problems here that come into play when we don't have the estate plan set up and trying to distribute the assets evenly, is because one, the kid that came back to the operation has been there for 2 or 3 decades is going to be completely 100% offended by the simple fact that you are stating as the parent, or basically the business owner, the asset owner, that you're going to give away part of the farm assets to the other 2 kids because you feel that you need to give them up evenly. This is a problem because let's say there's turmoil between the siblings, right? They don't get along or whatever. Well, now you're essentially creating a partnership between 3 people, 2 of which may not like each other very well, and it's going to cause a lot of headache there. And for the son or daughter that came back to the operation, they're going to take this as a complete slap in the face. And now they're trying to figure out, okay, great, I don't like my brother, for example, and I want to make sure I own that land. So now the operation is going to have to figure out if it can buy out the siblings, right? And again, the operation is going to be buying those assets twice now. You already bought them once inside of your lifetime. Now this next generation is gonna have to try to buy them back from the other siblings twice. I know as a parent, you probably don't want to do that, right? But the other thing though too that we run into is, now can the operation afford to? It may have worked for you to buy the ground 40, 50 years ago, or your parents to buy the ground at that time, but now can you afford to do it at the prices that things are at today? For most people, they're not going to be able to afford to do that. So you run the risk of really destroying the family farm operation when you're trying to distribute assets evenly. Now, there's other ways that we can do this and get around this, to where a lot of times with customers inside a Legacy Farmer, we have seen some of them, they were fortunate to have parents that really thought through this and had specific game plans in place as a part of their estate plan to make sure that the son or daughter that wanted to come back to the operation got all the farm assets, and the other kids got cash in the form of life insurance, right? That's another plan that we help customers sometimes, kind of map out and put into place there and connect them with the right resources so they can get those things set up. But that is actually works really well to be able to make sure the operation goes to the son or daughter that wants it, all of the operation, all of the assets, but then the other 2 get cash there, and it saves so much turmoil, it saves so much stress and anxiety, and it gives you as the parent a way to make sure that the operation is going to be viable for the next generation, versus splitting things evenly and then running the risk of the son or daughter having to buy out the other siblings' assets. Can the farm afford it? Let's say the siblings want to keep the ground and just rent it. Well, what's the agreed upon, rental rate? Like, there's all these problems and challenges that come up, versus very simply getting your estate plan structured, having life insurance set up, making sure that we have things in place so that the son or daughter that wants the farm gets the entire farm, and that we're really making sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure our legacy lasts, right? I know that's why you're building your business and why you're wanting to do things. I know that's why you came back to the operation. If you have parents right now that are in control of the assets, I know that's why you came back, because you want to carry on their legacy. You got to make sure that you're having these discussions way ahead of time, even if it's way before you think you should be. Make sure these things are getting done. One of the things that we always push Legacy Farmer members to do is part of our process is going through and obviously mapping out numbers, and they become a master of their finances, and we go through banking and cash flow and loan management, all this type of stuff there. But another part of that game plan is making sure that they get their estate plan set up while they're here inside a Legacy Farmer, so that they know deep down, hey, it's taken care of, right? I can rest easy knowing that if something happened to me tomorrow when I'm driving combine or whatever it is, and I die, things are set up for my family and for the next generation. So my friends, that ends today's video. Now, if you connect with any of these problems or challenges here that I talked about today, understand that we've worked with hundreds of family farms here that are going through this at this very moment. We've had to talk through a lot of different scenarios. There's a lot of things we've seen work and not work. So if you are needing help with this and really just getting the operation to a point where everything is structured and organized so that when you do pass it on to the next generation, it's like you're passing on a well-organized business in a box to where we're making it very difficult for them to fail, right? If you are wanting help with that and really getting everything structured and organized, click the link below, schedule a free call with our team. On that call, we're going to learn more about your operation, but you're going to learn more about us. And at the end of the day, we're going to see whether or not we are the right fit to work together. And if we are, great, we move forward. If we're not, we move on as well. So, my friends, thank you for joining this video today, and we'll catch you on the next one.